A coin, a trembling hand, a little girl standing in a diner no one remembers. She gave her last change to a man everyone feared. A biker, a ghost of the road. And with that cup of coffee, she lit a spark no one could contain. Because the next morning, the ground shook, the silence shattered, and a sea of Harleys filled the parking lot. What happened inside that diner is not the story you think it is. Stay until the end, because once you hear it, you'll never look at Brotherhood the same way again. Her name was Emily. Only 9 years old, yet already carrying the weight of a life far harsher than her small shoulders deserved. She lived on the margins of a town that forgot her, wearing shoes too big and a coat too thin, the kind of child who walked quietly so the world wouldn't notice she was there. That night, in a dimly lit roadside diner where tired truckers drank bad coffee and locals pretended not to see the shadows in the corner, Emily spotted him. A lone rider. His jacket was torn, his beard rough, his eyes heavy with the kind of silence that belongs only to men who have lived too long on the road. Everyone else kept their distance, whispering that trouble had just walked in. But Emily saw something different. She saw a man who looked cold. And in that instant, she made a choice that would change everything. Emily slid her last coins across the counter, her hands shaking as she whispered to the waitress that the rider's coffee would be hers to pay. The room fell silent, forks pausing mid-air, conversations dying on lips, because no one could comprehend what they were seeing. A child with nothing, offering everything she had to someone everyone else feared. The rider stared at the cup placed before him as if it carried the weight of every mile he had ridden. His scarred hands trembled when he finally lifted it, his voice rough as gravel when he asked her why. Emily's answer was as simple as it was devastating: "Because you looked cold." But beneath those words lived an entire story Emily did not tell. Her father had been gone for years, her mother trapped in endless work that kept her absent, and Emily had learned to live with the kind of silence that makes walls feel like prisons. The rider, hardened as he was, saw it. He recognized that emptiness because he had carried it himself. And though he left the diner without another word, he carried Emily's kindness back onto the road and back to his brothers. That night, beneath the hum of streetlights and the endless black of the highway, the story of Emily spread like wildfire through the Brotherhood. These men who had lived by codes outsiders would never understand felt something stir deep within them. Because loyalty was their language and respect was their creed. The idea that a child with nothing had chosen to show them trust demanded a response. Engines roared to life one by one, chrome catching the glow of the moon, until the night itself seemed to tremble under the weight of what was coming. By dawn, the diner's parking lot, usually half empty, forgotten, was transformed into a fortress of steel and leather. Harleys lined every inch, handlebars gleaming, exhaust pipes cooling in the morning air. The Brotherhood had made their decision. Emily would not be forgotten. When Emily returned to the diner that morning, she froze, wide-eyed at the sight before her. The ground rumbled under the weight of hundreds of motorcycles. Every seat, every space was filled with riders, their patches stitched with skulls, wings, and flames. To the townspeople who gathered at the windows, it looked like an army had come to conquer. But to Emily, it felt like something else entirely. The man from the night before stepped forward, no longer just a shadow in the corner, but a leader flanked by the thunder of his brothers. His voice carried over the hum of idling engines as he spoke directly to her. "Last night, you paid for my coffee. Today, we pay for your life." The diner shook, not with fear, but with something stronger: respect. In that moment, Emily was no longer invisible. She was the center of an army's loyalty, the heartbeat of a storm that had chosen to rise for her. What happened in the days that followed went far beyond that single morning. The bikers did not vanish after their engines cooled. They filled Emily's cupboards with food, patched the roof of her crumbling house, and gave her mother the kind of help no one else in town had ever offered. They raised money, bought school supplies, and made sure that Emily's path would not be one of loneliness. To the community, long accustomed to viewing bikers as outlaws, this was a revelation. They saw for the first time that behind the roar of engines was a code older than any law, the code of brotherhood, loyalty, and justice. And for Emily, who had lived with silence for so long, life was suddenly filled with sound. The sound of family. 1 week later, as the sun slipped low over her quiet street, Emily stepped outside and froze at the sight of rows of gleaming motorcycles lined neatly in front of her house. The rider approached, the same man she had once seen alone in the corner of a diner, and in his hands he carried something small but powerful, a leather vest. He knelt before her, placed it gently into her hands, and when she slid it on, she felt the weight of silver thread across her back. 2 words stitched into the leather, shining in the fading light: "Little sister." Tears welled in her eyes as she looked up at the sea of riders surrounding her, each one silent, each one standing as if to say she would never walk this world alone again. 1 coin, 1 coffee, 1 act of kindness. That was all it had taken to awaken a brotherhood that would forever protect her. 1 coin, 1 cup of coffee, 1 story that roared louder than 1,000 engines. This was just one of many forgotten legends of biker brotherhood. Subscribe to Hell's Road and ride with us into the next untold story.